there really is no sugarcoating this one. You might find this absolutely outrageous and rather alarming. British Transport Police has a policy that allows a biologically male police officer to conduct a more thorough intimate parts search of a woman if the officer has a gender recognition certificate legally recognising the officer as a woman. I've spoken about this in previous videos, both in respect of this policy and in respect of the legal definition of a woman, which is a case that's gone, believe it or not, to the Supreme Court, and we're waiting a judgment on the legal definition of a woman. But as it stands, this is the policy of British Transport Police. If you don't accept this position, and you may or you may not, but if you don't, then you're not alone, because this is under a legal challenge at the moment. There's been a file claim for judicial review to say that this is incompatible with various human rights. More about that in a moment. But as it stands, as I say, this is BTP's search position for transgender and non-binary officers. It says that it is designed to be compatible with search requirements with regard to more thorough and exposing intimate parts searches, or otherwise known as strip searches. Now, it says here, with reference to the Gender Recognition Act, that the Act enables people to change their legally recognised sex by obtaining a gender recognition certificate which entitles the holder to be treated for legal purposes in line with their required sex. Now, this has been argued at great length before the Supreme Court to be incompatible in various aspects with application of the Equality Act 2010, which is designed to protect people with regard to various protected characteristics, including that of sex, i.e. protecting women and protecting men in various ways. And the arguments put forward that a gender recognition certificate legally recognising for all purposes someone that has legally changed their sex to be incompatible with the Equality Act in various provisions. And this, I offer the view, is one such example where you may think that's exactly the case. Because the conclusion in this policy is that an officer may search as per the same sex on their birth certificate or listed on the gender recognition certificate, whichever is the most recent when enacting this search. Now, of course, with a GRC, they can obtain a new birth certificate with their required sex on it. But that ultimately means, because we cannot change biology, that ultimately means a biologically male officer with a GRC or a birth certificate that now says that the officer is a woman can conduct a search on a woman. And outside of consensual searches, this means that the officer has a statutory power to conduct that search. And I dare say many of you may disagree with that position. And in fact, as I said, it is under legal challenge. Because on behalf of Sex Matters, this letter of claim setting out the grounds for a judicial review was sent to British Transport Police. And to cut a long story short, British Transport Police said no. This letter set out in great detail the legal grounds of challenge, including Article 3 under ECHR, which is that no one shall be subjected to torture or cruel or inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. And of course, one may reasonably feel that a search of an officer of the opposite sex, including a more thorough intimate parts search, may well be inhumane or degrading treatment. There are various examples of where such a search should only be conducted by somebody of the same sex, and again, raising this question, should that really mean someone of the same biological sex? Many of you, doubtless, will think that that should absolutely mean the same biological sex, not with great respect, simply what it says on a piece of paper. And there's other cases that says even in the presence of an officer of another sex might indeed be a breach of Article 3. Of course, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984 also says that the constable carrying out a search shall be of the same sex as the person searched. And again, with intimate and strip searches, the officer must be the same sex as the detainee. And ultimately set out the grounds for judicial review as follows. Ground 1, violation of Articles 3 and 8 of ECHR and Article 10. They say it is clear that there will be a violation of Article 3 for a male officer to carry out a strip search on a woman. This remains the case if the male officer has a government-issued GRC and whether or not the woman knows about the certificate. There is no legal obligation on a woman to pretend that she's not being searched by a man just because he has a GRC. There is a legal obligation and a human rights obligation on the state to protect women from this humiliation. The Article 8 rights of a detainee or officer with a GRC do not outweigh the rights of a woman compelled to conduct or submit to a strip search of or by someone of the opposite sex. The Article 10 rights of a female detainee are violated if she's not told the sex of the person who'll be searching her, or if she's misled or deceived about it. For example, when she's told that she'll be searched by a female officer, but is in fact a male officer with a GRC. In other words, if the woman is told that she's being searched by a woman, but it is in fact a biological male officer with a GRC, then potentially she has her rights violated because she's been misled as to the true biological sex of the officer conducting the search. Furthermore, if a female officer or detainee is not given accurate information about a male's biological sex in relation to the strip search, then any consent that may be given to the strip search is likely to be vitiated, i.e. nullified. So again, if she's given consent believing that that is a woman conducting the search, but in fact was not given accurate information, then she cannot consent to such a search. Because another part of the BTP guidance is that they allow to provide for consent to those searches, and in doing so may be given inaccurate information, biologically inaccurate information. It goes on, true consent may also not be able to be provided due to the vulnerable condition detainees are in when being subjected to a strip search, or by officers worried about the impact objecting could have on them. In any event, there will also be an Article 8 breach caused by the BTP guidance due to the interferences with a person's dignity. There's also arguments about errors of law and being beyond power, which we call ultra vires, and frustrating the legal purpose. It says, given the serious risk of an Article 3 violation of allowing a male officer with a GRC to carry out a strip search on a detainee, and of requiring a female officer to carry out a strip search on a male detainee with a GRC, the requirement of Section 54 of PACE for the constable carrying out a search to be of the same sex as the person searched must be understood as a reference to actual sex, unmodified by a GRC, according to For Women Scotland. This is without doubt a situation where the context clearly and necessarily dictates that the strict biological definition of a woman is required, despite the provisions in Section 9. Again, these were arguments that were brought before the Supreme Court in the For Women Scotland case. To fail to read biological into Section 54 of PACE would render that piece of legislation incompatible with the ECHR and make the purpose of single-sex searches meaningless. Ground 3 focused on indirect discrimination and harassment, broadly arguing that women in general are more fearful of men than men are of women. Women are in general greater risk of violence at the hands of men than men are of violence at the hands of women. Thirdly, men are statistically more likely to be guilty of crimes of violence, sexual assault, indecent exposure and voyeurism than women, and women in general feel and have enforced against them taboos about physical modesty more powerfully than men. Ground 4 speaks of a breach of a public sector equality duty and failure of sufficient inquiry and or failure to take into account relevant considerations. For example, no consideration given to the impact of the BTP guidance on the protected characteristics of sex when it's clear that women will be significantly more impacted by this policy than men, as the fear, humility, indignity and harassment will be experienced on a far greater scale by women who are strip searched by a male with a GRC, or women having to carry out a strip search on a male with a GRC compared to men in the opposite position. But as I said, and there is much more to this letter and I'll link it in the description below, in response to this letter, broadly speaking, BTP said no, and accordingly, because they've said no, this has now been filed in court for judicial review. Again, I will link those in the description below. Do go and have a read of them if you're interested. But I will also link the crowdfunding page so that if you take an interest in this case, you can go and help support it, because legal action is very expensive and this is on behalf of all women everywhere, not just in the UK. This will have repercussions worldwide, and this, along with the case that's in the Supreme Court, will have significant impact on all women. So do go and read about it. Feel free to support the case, but that is exactly the position we are in at the moment. And dare I say it, many of you may strongly disagree with this policy and that this is the way that things have to be. That is why it is so important that you understand it, hence my video about it, hence the court case about it. Hence, I would encourage you to support this case by crowdfunding if you support them challenging this in court. Otherwise, we will end up where these policies are absolutely enshrined and emboldened in law, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. So, as I say, please do share the video with somebody so that more people will know about it. Like the video and subscribe to my channel. That helps me to reach a wider audience to tell you about these things. And as always, thank you for watching.